Hello, everyone. We are waiting for people to join in. Just a few minutes. I'm Eleonora Salas, Director of Studies at ICANA Binational Center in Córdoba, Argentina. I want to welcome you to the fourth webinar of our October edition of the Teaching Capacity Building Program that we are hosting with the support of the U.S. Embassy. This is a series of webinars that started in August and will continue until mid-November. They are all being delivered by English language teaching specialists who are all alumni of U.S. Embassy-sponsored programs. They have been kindly sharing their expertise and best practices during these hard times of remote teaching and learning. We all hope that these presentations will help you in your current teaching practice, whether it is virtual or in person. We are deeply grateful to all the presenters and to the U.S. Embassy for their support in the organization and delivery of this program. Before I introduce our presenters for today, I have some announcements about typing your questions in the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen, so that once the presenters have finished, they will have some time to answer all your questions or comments. And there will be a link in the chat to download your certificates of attendance. Our presenters for today, the webinar is called Meaning from Images to Words, are Susana Liruso and Ana Cecilia Cat. Susana holds a Master's of Arts degree in Applied Linguistics and TESOL from King's College, London University. At present, she is co-director of the Master of Arts program in English as a foreign language at the School of Languages at Universidad Nacional de Córdoba, here in Argentina. She has taught at university level and has been directly involved in teacher education for over 30 years. Her interests include the exploration of multimodality in teaching materials. She is an alumna of the e-teacher program on critical thinking, a program sponsored by the U.S. Embassy in Argentina. And Ana Cecilia Cat is the language teacher and a bachelor in English language and literature, graduated from the School of Languages, Universidad Nacional de Córdoba, where she teaches English language 1 and 2 and English phonetics and phonology 2. She also works as a teacher educator in a teacher training college. She is a Master of Arts candidate in the English program offered by the Facultad de Lenguas, Universidad Nacional de Córdoba, and she is a Fulbright scholar. So thank you both. I'm very happy to be introducing these two wonderful professors because they are from Córdoba, and we have known each other for a long time. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise today. So over to you, and let's all enjoy from all over the world. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leonora, for your very kind words. Okay, welcome everyone. I hope we can enjoy this lovely afternoon, at least here in Argentina together. So we're going to start with our presentation. Let me start sharing it. Okay, sorry. We want to start, this presentation by, first of all, thanking Eleonora and ICANA Binational Center, and of course the U.S. Embassy for inviting us to be part of this program today. Together with Susana Liruso, we are going to be introducing our presentation, Meaning from Images to Words. Very quickly, I'm going to introduce, the main overview of our presentation. The first thing that we're going to do this afternoon, is that we're going to be working with children in the field of second language learning. We're going to introduce the concept of visual literacy. Later on, we are going to talk about annotation, and we are going to provide some examples of how to work with this context. So before we actually start working with this presentation together, we would like to get to know you a little bit, okay? So we would like to ask you two questions. If you want, you can answer these questions through the chat. The first question that we have for you is, how many of you work with images in the classroom? Okay, do you work with images in your EFL class? And have you ever worked with picture books? Okay, in the ELT class. Those questions are very interesting. Okay, so most of you are saying that you do. That's great. Okay, so that's very important. I love picture books. We do love picture books too. Very nice. Okay, so people say that not. Okay, I hope we can convince you today. Well, it's not a matter of convincing, but I think that we hope we can share some ideas that you may find interesting. Okay, word picture books can fulfill different functions. Warm up is one of them. Images to activate a schemata. That's a typical thing that we have seen so far since Brunner onwards. Very nice. Okay, you haven't tried picture books yet. Okay, well, maybe this would be, an invitation to start introducing them in your classes. But we are going to be presenting picture books to work with children this time. But remember that there are picture books to work with every single age. Okay, so in case that we haven't presented a picture book for your group age, the type of class you teach, you can contact us and we can help you sort other decisions that are suitable for your educational context. You have tried comics. That's a very nice one too. We're not going to be working with comics today, but comics are very nice, mainly to work with teenagers. They love comics, and there are a lot of applications online to create comics too, and they tend to love that. Okay, very nice. Thank you very much for your answers. Okay. So we are going to start considering children, okay? But again, our main focus are children, but there are a lot of things that can be applied for different ages, okay? So maybe you can write down your questions in case that there is something that puzzles you. So we're going to consider young learners, okay, as learners of English, and we are going to take into account two things. First of all, we are going to consider that when we are working with children, we will produce different type of situations for children to learn with others. And this is essential to foster this collaborative work. And also we'll be considering young learners of English within the formal system of education. So we will be English teachers. We will be teaching the second language, but at the same time, we're going to have, according to our beliefs, a much more important role, and is the roles as educators. When we are educators, we are going to be teaching the language together with other important competencies, such as critical thinking and the four macro skills that we all know, such as reading, writing, and so on. So what do we mean when we start mentioning this idea of learning with others? When we consider that our students learn with others, we are also acknowledge that every single child, okay, is an individual and they have individual learning needs. But most of the learning takes place in a social context. This can be a language school, a particular school, and very importantly is that within this social environment, we're going to present different tasks. So how is that we're going to start making sense, or how is that we're going to start working with this task? Is that we're going to socialize a lot. We're going to exchange our ideas. We're going to build knowledge together. That's why we say that making sense is a social process. So how do children make sense? children mainly make sense through exploration and communication, depending on the type of activities we present for them. So, learning with others means that we need to provide our students with a lot of collaborative tasks. Why? Because this type of collaborative task will help them to learn from each other, to engage in cooperative talking. Okay, they're going to be exchanging ideas with a particular purpose and in a meaningful way. In this way, they're going to share and broaden their understanding of the subject at hand. Also, they are going to learn other meaningful skills such as taking turns, sharing points of view, challenging their own point of view. So, what's the role of formal education in this making meaning? Well, first of all, we need to create different learning experiences because children will be learned by doing or through doing. And in these experiences, it's very important that we challenge them and we help students create meaning. It's not that they just need to create a particular meaning because kids will have, like, all of them will provide their own perspective on a subject matter. So we need to have open tasks. And how is that we are going to make them get engaged in these tasks? Well, you need to add novelty to your tasks. Children's brains react positively to new things, so you need to start adding elements that will pull their attention and they will engage them. And something that is very important, going back to the idea of ourselves being educators, is that when we are actually teaching them how to work with the language and look for patterns in the language, the fact that you are teaching them patterning also will have an impact on their critical thinking skills. So the part of patterning will also help them focus on different aspects that later on will help them understand other future patterns to transport knowledge and make sense of other things in a more autonomous fashion. So how can we provide, okay, for meaning, experience, novelty, and patterning? Well, learning through different modes, because meaning is created through different modes. If we're going to be working with picture books, for instance, this is the cover of a picture book, and if we work with a print version, right, we are going to have at least two modes at play. On the one hand, you're going to have the verbal mode because the students will have to read those words. But at the same time, you're going to have different visual cues. If we focus on the monkey here, we can even say, oh, this person can be a shy person. Maybe he's not that comfortable being a chump. But if you actually even look at this shadow, you get another type of meaning. So shadows, colors, body language, all that will contribute to creating this type of meaning. And picture books will demand the students to learn how to decode both the pictorial language and the verbal language to understand the ulterior meaning of the text. So, how do we communicate? Well, we communicate through languages, okay? It's not just the verbal language, but through languages. As I told you before, here we're considering print picture books, so we work with pictorial language and verbal language. However, if we are going to be working with videos, you may also consider the auditory mode as well, okay? So when we start working with picture books, we also need to consider visual literacy. Considering the same question, how is it we provide for meaning, experience, novelty, and patterning? We can do this using picture books because picture books not only help us develop additional competencies to listening, speaking, reading, and writing, but they help us teach visual literacy that will have a positive impact, okay, on helping them become more active and critical readers. Being visually literate implies reading, talking, and viewing. So there are different elements or resources that you can actually use to teach visual literacy. However, we have chosen to work with picture books because of different reasons. We are going to explain some of them today due to time constraints, but there is like a plethora of information about why is that picture books are so important to work in the is to work with young learners. So you have a picture book is a text. It has illustrations. It has a total design. It is an item of manufacture and commercial product, but most importantly, it is a social, cultural, and historical document, and foremost, an experience for a child. These type of picture books are very rich. They really call students' attention because of their illustrations, but at the same time, they are very rich to understand cultural elements. And more importantly, even, is that they are narratives, and children are hooked into narratives. Here are just some of the examples, okay, of different picture books that we're going to work with today, and other picture books that you can consult later on. Anthony Brownie, to me, is like a must in terms of authors. Then you have Maurice Sendak, Eric Carley, Jean Willis. Those are some of the authors that you can explore later on, and you can deal with different type of topics using any of these authors. So there are different characteristics of picture books. Again, we have selected some of them to present here today. And I'm going to explain them as we move along. The aspects about picture books is that they help us to teach intertextuality, different elements of intertextuality. So this picture is taken from Voices in the Park by Anthony Brownie. And you can see, for instance, in this picture, King Kong, Father Christmas or Santa Claus, and different elements that are typical of different paintings. This is something I truly like about Voices in the Park, and is that this book shows different perspectives. And if you actually pay attention to the images, you're going to see how in this text, the author has made very explicit this relationship to different perspective. So you're going to have the first voice, that is the voice of this mother, okay, that according to the settings, we can say that she's like upper middle class. If you pay attention to the font, you're going to see that it's a font of an adult. It's very neat, very clear. Well, the fourth voice is the voice of this child. So the font is already telling you that's not let's say, the voice of someone who has mastered, okay, writing yet, okay. Here you have another very clear visual in which two perspectives are presented through this lamppost. We can see this separation between this child who's very happy, and that happiness is depicted through these clear skies. You have the face of this child who's a little bit more sad. And again, we can see that reflected on the environment. You have these dark clouds. You can even see this picture of these bikers, but if you actually pay attention, both bikers are riding in opposite directions. So there are very rich elements. Even the dots here, they represent different words. Unusual layouts. This is another important aspect, at least to me, because you can see a lot of elements that you can read from this text. You have this child, and this child is being represented as having a very overbearing mother, and you can see that in the shadow. And actually, if you pay attention to the shadow of the hat that actually represents the mother, you can see how this presence is in the child's mind even when he looks at the landscape. So you can see the shape of the hat in every single lamppost, in the clouds, and even the trees. So there you can see that there are a lot of visual cues that are helping you to read the text, although you're not reading any verbal content. Patterning. This is a very interesting book to talk about families and how families need to share the household chores. And it's called Piggy Book. And in this story, the mother has gone on a strike. So she decides not to do the cleaning and the cooking anymore. And Brownie actually portrays the male members of the family as undergoing some sort of metamorphosis. So they're actually becoming pigs, and that is actually translated in the in the moon, in the clock, in the salt and pepper shakers, in the jam. So all these patterns help develop our students' critical thinking skills. The use of color. Here you can explore different aspects because not only having two different distinctive colors help us draw the attention to one specific character, but at the same time it's interesting because we can even ask our students to explore these other aspects. So here you can see the wolf, you can see a raven, the tower, the needle spin, the spinning needle, and all these elements are generally in stories as some elements of doom, okay? So we are going to see now how all these different picture books that present different types of meanings, they have intertextual allusions, and they need, okay, this interdependency between the world and an image can help us to teach, okay, very important aspects as regarding critical reading, writing, and the generation of language. So which are the visual strategies that we can do, or we can actually use or employ in order for these to take place? We need to help our students interpret and analyze images, evaluate those images, and we can even encourage them to create their own images. So the recognition and the use of these elements of visual communication will actually promote critical reading, writing, and the generation of language. So before Susanna continues, in case that you do not have picture books at hand, and mainly if you are actually working with your students, virtually, we have suggested that maybe you can see all these pictures on YouTube. So now I was going to say coworker, is going to introduce the system of annotation for you. Here.
Okay, here we go. Well, in fact, annotation is a strategy, a technique used to extract meaning from images. The author, Arispe, says that with annotation, we can excavate meaning. We have to try to see what the images tell us. We need to work with rich images. And I think that by now, after listening to Cecilia, you do realize what we mean by rich images. As I was saying, the annotation strategy is a refreshing and creative tool that can encourage a more careful reading of images. We are going to share with you now an example, the way we worked with a group of little kids. This is how we went about it. What you need to do is to give groups of children an A4 color photocopies of images selected from the book for them to have to look at the pictures. After looking at the images, children are invited to write comments. What kind of comments can children write? They can make characters speak. That is to say, they can draw speech bubbles for the characters who appeared in the images. Or they can make characters think. They can draw thought bubbles for the characters who appeared in the images. This is what we did with the story that I'm going to show you now. or they can write short comments or reactions. Let's think about a story in which children interact with pets. They can write their comments or their reactions, saying something like, pets are good companies. Or with more complex images, they can write speculations, something that is not patently shown or said. They can say it is probably a very strong storm, or the character might be afraid, or something like that. So we have three different types of examples of annotation so far. We worked with this story that is called Willie and Hugh. Willie is the same character Cecilia was talking about just some moments ago. This is the story of two friends of a very unlikely friendship, because as you can see in the picture, Willie is a shy, lonely chimp, very formal, wearing formal clothes, while his friend Hugh Jake, is a tough gorilla, capable of everything, is a cool person, while Willie is just the opposite, but they are friends. So what we did was to work with the book. We told the story, but these kids had been exposed to several techniques of visual literacy. Some of the techniques that Cecilia talked about, they were capable of identifying certain representation of color, to finding patterns, to read between lines. So, and this is the activity we used. This is the central part of the book, where you see a number of gorillas participating in a race. When we said rich images, we mean this sort of images. Look at the shoes, the running shoes these gorillas are wearing. They are cool, they are in fashion, they are so colorful. The kids were fascinated by the running shoes. Also the outfits. They even started interacting, thinking about whether they were all he gorillas or there were some she gorillas, right? All Anthony Brown's books are zoomorphic. So they have the shape of chimps or gorillas. So once they have looked at the pictures, we asked the kids in groups to draw speech bubbles and to write something in the bubbles, right? So to make the characters speak. So this is what they wrote when we asked them to complete the speech bubbles. But then we worked with the same pictures, and they were asked to draw thought bubbles and also write what they thought each of the gorillas were thinking. This is very interesting because this is one way of working with critical thinking with children. Children know very well that sometimes what we say is not exactly what we think. And they were fascinated by this type of activity. They even asked, can we write anything? Can we write what we really think this gorilla is thinking? And that made the activity Very interesting. So now we're going to analyze the discourse produced by the children. So here we have speech and here we have thought. Okay, as regards the first runner, in the speech bubble, we find these examples of discourse. I'm the best, I'm the winner, I'm the first. But for the first runner, we found one thought bubble, I'm a champion, right? For the second runner said, yes, yes, I run fast. Another kid wrote something different, I can. There were no thought bubbles for this runner. The third runner was the gorilla dressed in pink. Okay. That one, as I told you before, they discussed whether that was a girl or not, or just a gorilla that liked pink. And that was then reflected in what the kids produced, because it's not that clear in the picture, but we can have the idea that one of the gorillas is trying to stop this gorilla from running. That's why it says stop bothering. But at the level of thinking, the gorilla says, I love pink. The sixth runner, the penultimate runner, that is not the first group, okay, still in saying something, telling something, the gorilla said, I'm strong. But thinking, it was running is difficult. So it's not that I am very bad, but it's that running is difficult. And the seventh runner, the last one said, I'm tired. But at the level of thinking, I'm a loser, I don't like running, or directly, running is not for me. And Willie, that is watching the race, thinks I can't run. So you see how interesting it is to exploit for critical thinking. And it's we are working with the English language. These were some of the responses. Remember that I said that making comments or reactions was another way to use annotations. So kids produce comments like friends are more important. This is the way the kids wrote their comments. Of course, you might be wondering, more important than what? Okay, friends are important, but I left it as it was produced by the kids. Because this is a story of friendship, then friends are important. No bullying, because there are instances in the book in which gorillas make fun of Willie. Bullying is very bad, and Willie is happy with a friend. These four responses show that kids understood very well the message of the story, because it is a story of friendship, but it is a story of bullying at the same time. Is a story that bullying is overcome thanks to the presence of a friend or making a friend. So this is a interesting indeed that most of the responses have to do with the message of the story. Well, there were no, this story was not a story suitable for hypothetical comments. Remember that I said that making speculations was another way of using annotations, but there was nothing to speculate here. Speculations usually require a more advanced level of English, because you need maybe, might, could have. It's possible, but it was not. We could not apply it to this story, and that's why I do not have the examples here. Now I'm going to show you a sort of. This is a summary that the kids produced after working with the story, after the telling of the story, working with the annotation, speech bubbles and thought bubbles. We said, okay, write about the experience. And this is what they produced. This probably, I think I did not tell you that these were kids of 8 years old, and they had beginners, post-beginners level of English, or pre-intermediate, if you like. This is a race. There are 7 gorillas. They are in the park. They have very nice running shoes that are wearing in green is my correction. I mean, they have very nice running shoes. It's not a mistake. It's not wrong, but it's not very English. I think that an English person would say they are wearing very nice shoes. That's why I wrote it there. Willie and Hugh are looking at the race. Taking into account the level of English of the kids, I think that this is a very nice description, and in our belief is much more authentic language. Children were much more enthusiastic about doing this than a description like this that was produced by the kids without working with visual literacy. Because what we did was to work with the story with a group of children who had never been introduced to visual literacy and had no exposure to exploitation of colors, patterning, design, and to use it with kids that have done certain visual literacy. With the group that had no idea of visual literacy, this is what they produced without having worked with annotation. The gorillas are in the park. It's a nice day. There are 8 trees. I can see 7 gorillas. They are running. Willie is in the park. This is not bad. You have a number of very short sentences in English, but there are sentences that are very unnatural. It's the product of having to say something in English, because nobody would count the number of trees unless there is a you are a game. It's a game. You are playing with trees. You would never say the number of trees in a park. In a park, you think that it's a park because, among other things, among other elements of nature, you're going to find trees. So there are 8 trees. It's just showing that I know how to count. In this written version, it's the number, so you don't even need to write 8 in English. I can see 7 gorillas, they are running. So you see that the previous one is richer. This is a race, there are 7 gorillas, they are in the park, they have very nice running shoes. Willie and Hugh are looking at the race. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say with this. Oh, sorry. And just if you might be wondering, okay, I like picture books, but I do not have a picture book for every topic I want to discuss or I want to try with my students. I want to show you this. This is working with pictures taken from internet. This is a story that we made up, Cecilia and me, last week, and that we told via Zoom to a group of students in high-level secondary school for first and second year of secondary school. The first year students, they never had English in direct contact with the teacher, so they've been learning English through remote teaching. So what we can do if we want to make up our own stories is find pictures in the net, probably finding some elements, minimalist elements, if you like. Here we have a circle of shoes, 10 shoes, and people talking. So what we did was to tell a story, to build up a story around this picture. So they had to identify who the characters were, and we said things like, Agustin is very short. So what they had to say was number 2, because it says there, I'm not tall. So they were looking at the pictures, reading, and then they had to speak or write in the chat. That depends on the number of people you have in your audience. Tatiana is in silence. Must be number 3 because there's nobody, I mean, there's no speech bubble there. Mike likes pizza. Well, and in that way. So around that picture, that is a picture that we took from the internet, we could build a story. The story, of course, is a little bit longer. It was a story about Students' Day, celebrating Students' Day, but it worked out well in the sense that they had to watch and react. This is just for you to give you an idea of how to work if you do not have a picture book. And here you have online resources to work with annotations. The example you have here on the right is the example of a Jamboard activity that we worked with last week, not with the story that I was just showing you some minutes ago, but with another story. And the kids had to speculate, and they did it on Jamboard. It was really very nice because I never expected that level of participation and the ideas that the kids had. Very, very, very interesting ideas. We had to solve a kind of detective story. Okay. Now, you might recognize the character. I think the wolf wants to say something. And here is Little Red Riding Hood trying to listen. And this is what Little Red Riding Hood has to say. The talk has come to an end, but we are open now for questions. Here you have our mails. You can contact us anytime for questions or to give us some feedback. That would be interesting. Not only for questions, but also for giving us feedback. Is it
Thank
good?
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Susana and Cecilia. People are thanking and for a very nice presentation. We have a few questions. The first one was at the very beginning. Somebody wanted you to suggest sites for blank cartoon clips.
Sites on internet?
Yes.
Well, those will depend. Sorry, this will depend a little bit on where you live. Actually, maybe if you send us an email, we can help you from there, because there are some. I can mention some of them, like comic strip. That is like the most useful one. But you know, that's not available in every single country, and there are limitations on some ones you have to pay. So maybe if you send us an email telling us a little bit of your context, we can help you from there.
Okay, thank you. Then somebody asked, is it good for a kid to start writing in L2 from first grade?
Well, that is not a straightforward answer, because it depends on the level of exposure to the L2 and whether the kid know how to write, knows the alphabet and how to write in the mother tongue. I don't know where who wrote the question, whether if the person is a Spanish speaker, that we share the same alphabet, that I don't know, but I see no problem. Now, if the exposure to the L2 is very, very low, then wait for some time until you get some oral language.
Okay. Then somebody asks, how do you make students notice all the features of visual literacy, like the ones you mentioned, like patterning, layouts, color? Do you do that after telling the story, while you are telling the story?
In fact, if you work with visual literacy, you can do it with any element. You can do it with your English book. You can.
Yeah, but the thing is whether you do it right. Sometimes, I mean, what is going to happen if first of all, you always need to start from reading comprehension first. So you're going to start working with that. Maybe you're going to read the story. And as you start reading the story, you will ask the students to start noticing some of the patterns. Most of these picture books have like 30 pages. So if you start decoding the first pages, later on, automatically the student will start paying attention to this pattern and will start looking for these visual cues on their own. It's not that you're going to be teaching them all along, but it's as you read, because again, what we mentioned before, the characteristic of picture books is that you need to help students understand or decode both the pictorial language and the verbal language. If you just tell the story through the verbal mode, but you don't pay attention to the visual mode, students will understand half of the story. This is a good technique also if you want to start, making or raising awareness within the students that they need to read both. So sometimes they tell you, okay, just read the verbal language and ask them to reflect on that, and then read the whole story, and you will get the whole meaning. So depending, okay, if we're introducing the technique, if you really want to make your students aware of the importance of reading visual pictures, you may start by doing one or the other. But if not, it's something quite integrative. And something else is that sometimes the first time that you read a picture book, maybe you will choose to focus your attention on some elements. And later on, as you read many more, you're going to start paying attention to other elements. Because if you introduce too many elements at the same time, you're going to be overwhelming the students.
Mm-hmm. Great. And somebody asks if you tell the story in your own words or you read the story as it was originally written by the author. I think this refers to the fact
all
that
of the above.
Yeah, all of the above, depending on the
Yes.
group, depending on many things. But if the question is, can we change, can we use our own words to tell a story? Yes, yes, of course. Yes, of course. Sometimes sometimes you have to respect certain things if there is a pun upon words or something like that. But that is possible, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And well, and this is from me. I suppose that you've done this before, face to face, in person, and you have the book. And what about the kids? You show the book, or do they all have the same book, or you give them copies? How do you go about this?
We have a book, and what we do is get color copies of the parts of the story we are going to work with after the story.
And if you have many or too many students, like you're working with a large group, sometimes we have the book, but we also have like a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
So that we share like the images that are like bigger for them to actually pay attention to all the cues.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have two more questions. One is from Roderick. Says, what challenges may these picture books pose for the learners, and how do you deal with them?
Linguistic challenges, or
I guess maybe.
The interesting thing about these books is that they help kids interpret, and we live in an image society, so learning how to decode images is part of education. Remember that we started off saying that we have to see ourselves as educators, not only as language instructors. So using images to show kids how to interpret the images that they are going to see in their lives is part of education. It's linguistic education plus visual education.
Yeah, and sometimes, for instance, metaphors could be something that they find difficult. Like when I referred to the story of the piggy book, like trying to understand this metamorphosis. So what you're going to do is just to teach certain aspects, or to ask the students to reflect before you start reading the story. So you start asking them, okay, what are the typical characteristics of pigs? Okay, are they clean or not? And believe me, later on, as you start hooking them in the story, the students will actually establish the connection on their own.
Kids will discover certain things that sometimes surprise the teachers.
Yeah, and adults do not realize about certain
exactly.
things so quickly.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I remember now a character that used to wear clothes with certain emoticons, and the kids picked up that immediately. In fact, I did realize about that once one of the kids says, look, the character is happy because look at the t-shirt, look at the cap, there's some emoticon on the cap.
Mm-hmm. Remember that since students, maybe they are not really handling on the verbal language, the visual language becomes much more important to decode the message. So they will explore the visuals much more than we do. Since we understand the verbal language, sometimes we tend to skip or we analyze less the pictorial language.
You can use language for more simple language for certain descriptions, and then show in a picture action that in which you would need simple past or more complex verb tenses. Then you show a picture, and then you continue with language that is simpler for the kids.
Mm-hmm. So as with everything, it's part of all the scaffolding that you do before telling the story or working with the images.
Sure.
There's one last question from Shiba Raut. Do you think pictures are the only ways of motivating students? What could be some other ways of motivating students? Up to what level should we use pictures for teaching students?
You can use pictures for all levels, and there are other ways to motivate students. Sounds, for example, with sounds can excite your imagination, are very, very interesting.
I think that mainly we're working with images because right now our society is very visual in itself. That's why we even showed you other applications and software that you can use these days, because we were considering that maybe most of you may not be teaching in the brick and mortar classrooms. That's why we thought about Jamboard and ThinkLink. So it's true that there are other elements to motivate them, but believe me, even if you tell student to do some homework and post that on Instagram because they're working with pictures, that is going to be incredibly motivating. Using right now different type of software, creating videos, okay? So I think that working with images is not just reading or learning to read them, but when you actually ask them to create them, to write them, I mean, with these ideas of actually writing the thought bubbles and the say bubbles, they love it, believe me.
One important thing that I think we have not mentioned, but it's a fact, is that images are accessed by the brain much more quickly than language. And that's why images are used in stations, well, traffic lights is one example. Imagine if you had to read, now you can turn right. We have a whole code that is based on graphics.
Okay, and there is one more question about Maria Lorena says, what's your opinion? Is it important and useful? She says that it's important and useful for my students to make a short list of vocabulary after the storytelling. What's your opinion on this?
In order to remember the vocabulary, probably that's what Lorena wants to say. I think it's all right, yes.
Yeah, okay. Generally you will start introducing the vocabulary first, and then you can work with that afterwards as well. I wouldn't have it both ways.
Yeah, in general, you pre-teach what is absolutely necessary for understanding a story, but sometimes some items of vocabulary might become important for some reason when you tell the story, and then you can work with that at the end of the story. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Susana and Cecilia. Everybody is so grateful and so happy with your ideas. I particularly love all the annotation strategies, and I think that we can all use even these stories, with adults, with teens,
sure.
not just with teens, and you can exploit this so much more. So Thank you very much. It's been really enlightening.
Okay, thank you very much, Eleonora. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure for us to be sharing this seminar with you, and Okay, we hope to get emails if you have questions.
Yes. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
All.
Okay, and thank you all for joining us today. And please join us for the last webinar of October, which is Tuesday, October 27th. The topic is Let's Spice Up Our Classes, Dramatization Tools for All by Gonzalo Diaz. So see you soon, stay safe, stay healthy, and till our next encounter. Thank you again.